he's running against the greatest political machine in the history of the world.
Right.
Unlimited super PAC money. I mean, just unlimited money. You know, dirty politics. You see these videos that have come out, and the WikiLeaks and everything that's happening.
Does that bother you guys at all? Well, sometimes you feel like none of this sticks, no matter how much corruption gets thrown up against the wall, exposed in that campaign, and does it resonate?
I hope it bothers everybody, because honestly, I think it's disgusting. I mean, I really do. When you have a paid DNC operative, one of the top people who had been to the White House 340 times, and he's on hidden camera bragging about how he incited riots in Chicago, I don't know how a person like that's not in jail. I mean.
But when he talks about things like term limits, I mean, that resonates with people. There are none of us who really believe that people going to Washington ought to make it a career. Washington has become the Roach Motel. People go in, but they never come out.
These are stolen documents, stolen by the Russians. It's now confirmed from John Podesta. They are being put out for exactly this purpose.
Well,
the Russians and Donald Trump want this campaign to be about something else right now.
Well, let me just speak to that, though, because, you know, the Trump tax returns were stolen as well when they were mailed to the New York Times. You guys didn't object to that. In fact, you jumped all over them.
Well, we don't know where those tax returns come from.
Well, they were clearly stolen.
We don't know, and you'd have to work with the New York Times on that.
Do you think that Trump had given them?
I don't know. I don't know how they got to the New York Times.
I guess what I'm saying is if we're looking at the fruits of that theft, and I will call it a theft, it's fair to look at the fruits of your theft.
I think what's particularly disturbing in this situation is that the intelligence community has now confirmed that that John Podesta's emails and the DNC emails were stolen by the Russians.
I know about the Russian connection. I'm talking about the $12 million from the King of Morocco, and the fact that this continues to sort of show the line between private and public, and Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation.
Again, this is the discussion the Russians want us to be having. They stole this information. They're selectively leaking. I can't even verify any of the information that you have there. We simply don't have enough time as a campaign to
I promise you, if these were not true, you'd tell us.
A great point, Chris Wallace.
But what was caught on tape is beyond disturbing. Watch this.
If you're there and you're protesting and you do these actions, you will be attacked at Trump rallies. That's what we know.
So that's part of the process of eliciting the reaction.
The whole point of it is we know that Trump's people will freak out, his security team will freak out, and his supporters will lose their.
This is Scott Fogle. He is the National Field Director for Americans United for Change. He used to work for People for the American Way, an organization funded by George Soros. He also has his own company called the Fogle Group. He is one of the dark operatives for the Clinton campaign.
We are contracted directly with the DNC and the campaign, both.
Yeah.
I am contracted to him, but I answer to the head of special events for the DNC and the head of the special events and political for the campaign.
The campaign pays DNC, DNC pays Democracy Partners pays the Fogle Group, the Fogle Group goes and executes.
Democracy Partners is a private political consulting company with deep ties to Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama's White House, and the Democratic National Committee.
We are the primary mechanism as a team. Democracy Partners is the tip of the spear.
Whatever Trump and Pence are going to do, we have a bench.
Okay.
And we have a whole team across the country that does that. Both consultants and people from the Democratic Party and the Democratic Party apparatus and people from the campaign, the Clinton campaign. Again, my role with the campaign is to manage all that.
So I'm basically Deputy Rapid Response Director for the DNC for all things Trump on the ground.
This guy is Aaron Black. He works full-time for Creamer at Democracy Partners. He directs the spontaneous protests at Trump and Pence events. His real name is actually Aaron Minter. We don't know why he uses the name Black.
Nobody's really supposed to know about me. So the Chicago protest, when they shut all that was us. It was more him than me, but none of this is supposed to come back to us because we want it coming from people. We don't want it to come from the party. So if we do a protest and it's DNC protest, it's right away the press is going to say partisan. But if I'm in there coordinating with all the groups on the ground and sort of playing field general, but they're the ones talking to the cameras, then it's actually people. But if we send out press advisories with DNC on them and Clinton campaign, it doesn't have Same effect.
Because in this video, they explain the flow of money and their rapid response operations. And this is what they say. The campaign pays the DNC. The DNC pays Democracy Partners. Democracy Partners pays the Foval Group. The Foval Group goes out and executes the on the ground, meaning when they foment anger and fighting and even take credit and brag about that they're responsible for what happened in Chicago when they stopped Donald Trump from giving a speech. What is your reaction to all these tapes?
Well, I think if it turns out to be a systematic organization that blocked Trump from even having a meeting in Chicago, it's a direct assault on democracy and on the rule of law. And of course,
they are saying on this tape that they are coordinating with the DNC. They are coordinating with, by the way, that would be a violation of campaign finance law. But all of this is coordinated, all of this is designed, that this is organized by them around the country to create a false image that Trump campaigns are violent. And they said they're doing it in every city, in every town, in every state, and they themselves are fomenting the violence. I mean, what does that say if the DNC and the campaign's involved in this? While we're speaking, Mr. Speaker, I'm going to put up on the screen, you know, you got John Podesta wishing that the Bernardino shooter was named Chris. You got the head of the Clinton campaign literally, you know, calling about taxes and health, hypersensitive issues. Political reporter has offered a campaign a chance to edit the story. We have focus group testing whether or not Obama's father is a Muslim. So we discover in WikiLeaks how dirty tricks were used even against Barack Obama. The campaign believed that Obama committed voter fraud in 2008, but I was watching you this weekend. They're making a big deal of that in terms of Donald Trump suggesting it's a possibility. As you look at that, as you look at the conflicts of interest, as you look at the pay-to-play scheme that was discovered over the money that was raised for Haiti and the lists that are made for Clinton supporters and donors, that they get preferential treatment in terms of the contracts that would be awarded after 150,000 people died. In its totality, what are we to make of all of this?
Well, look, this is a giant criminal enterprise disguised as a foundation and disguised as a campaign. And you can tell, though, an article that came out today I thought was fascinating that analyzed donations by news media to the Clinton and Trump campaigns. 96% of all the donations went to Clinton. So that means among the news media, the ratio was 24-1. In favor of Hillary Clinton. Now, of course, they wouldn't suggest that they're biased, but 24-1, which, by the way, is about the same number as the amount of minutes dedicated Friday a week ago between the Trump 11-year-old tape and WikiLeaks. It was 23 minutes on Trump and 57 seconds in all three networks combined on WikiLeaks. So part of what's going on is the elite media, which really shouldn't be considered news media. They're really propaganda. I'm thinking that the Columbia School of Journalism should rename itself into the Columbia School of Propaganda, because these people aren't engaged in news. They are methodical propagandists for the left, smothering negative information about Hillary and maximizing negative information about Trump in a way that is a huge disservice to the United States of America and to the people of the United States.
Mr. Speaker, indulge me for about a minute here, and we'll put it up full screen here for our audience to see. As I just run down the list of revelations here that the news media is not reporting, as they seem obsessed with allegations one after another about Donald Trump that one by one seem to be becoming debunked. But, you know, we know that Clinton had a public and private position on many of the main issues. If we can put this up on the screen, guys. And Obama knew about the Clintons' private email account. And we know that Clinton claims Saudi Arabia and Qatar funded ISIS. Well, that's fascinating, considering, you know, both of them abuse women, gays and lesbians, and persecute Christians and Jews, and they still accepted money from them. That Clinton showed concern about vetting refugees, said we can't possibly vet them. That means she's willing to gamble with the lives of the American people. That Clinton bragged about being invited into Putin's inner sanctum. She was giving Donald Trump a hard time about that. That she said she's removed from the struggles of the middle class. She's so rich. They have a plan to attack Catholics and evangelicals and infiltrate the Catholic Church. She admitted a no-fly zone would be very difficult, but supports it publicly. She went back and forth over the Keystone Pipeline, said fracking was a gift. She praised Wall Street in her paid speeches. She supported a plan that would cut Social Security. She showed support for open borders and an open hemisphere. She hated to use the term everyday Americans. Then we've got the media, CNBC offering Clinton advice. The New York Times, by the way, allowing quote edits, the Boston Globe pumping up her campaign, Univision giving advice, MSNBC getting fed questions, Donna Brazile leaking town hall questions, Podesta calling Latinos needy. I mean, I can't even touch the surface here. All of which describes corruption at a level, I'll be honest, that is bigger almost than Watergate to me. But the news media is ignoring it.
No, look, this is 100 times bigger than Watergate. Watergate was the stupid action of a handful of people who actually got caught up in the cover-up. Remember, Watergate is one break-in of the Democratic National Headquarters, and then the effort to cover up how it happened. That is a fairly narrow thing. This is a level of corruption that permeates the federal government. This is a level of corruption that you find in the Veterans Administration, you find in the FBI now. I mean, Comey has become a director who is corrupting the system. And you can just tell by looking at, as more and more stuff comes out, you have to say to yourself, how could they possibly not have indicted her? And the reason is simple. The fix was in. You have the Attorney General of the United States in a secret meeting with a former president the week his wife is going to meet with the FBI, and we're supposed to believe that it was purely an accident. This is a level of fundamental dishonesty across the whole system.
Airing a list of grievances, vowing that he is going to sue the DNC for allegedly trying to incite violence at his rallies.
The system is also rigged because Hillary Clinton should have been precluded from running for the presidency of the United States. But the FBI and the Justice Department covered up her crimes, which included lying to the FBI and Congress on numerous occasions, and included saying, I do not recall, to the FBI on 39 separate times. She recalls everything else, but 39 separate times she said, I do not recall. Well, that's a lie also.
Protecting our cyber infrastructure and digital networks has to be a matter of national security as well as economic priority. I think this is a responsibility we all share as Americans, but as State Department employees, we have a special duty to guard ourselves and our sensitive information. The Bureau of Diplomatic Security and IT staff work around the clock to defend us against cyber attacks. But the real key to cybersecurity rests with you. Applying the department community policies and being alert to potential threats will help protect all of us. Because together we can do our part to improve the security of the State Department and of our nation.
Then there is the deletion of at least 33,000 emails after receiving a subpoena from the United States Congress. That's after receiving the subpoena. A big part of the rigging of this election is the fact that Hillary is being allowed to run despite having broken so many laws on so many different occasions. Why is she allowed to run? The dishonest mainstream media is also part, and a major part, of this corruption.
But let's highlight the fact that Congress can take steps that it's refusing to take to hold Mrs. Clinton accountable on this email scandal. And I think this is something important to remember. You know, Mrs. Clinton testified to Congress that she turned over all of her government emails. We know that to be false. And Congress, what did it do? It referred that question of whether she committed perjury to the Department of Justice for a criminal investigation. Well, who are they fooling? They know what's going to happen at the Obama Justice Department. They already know where the FBI director comes down on that. Why isn't there a contempt citation pending against Mrs. Clinton now? Why do they have to wait for the Justice Department to do something? If they think that she was in contempt of Congress, the way they treated in terms of her testimony being incorrect or false, and the fact that emails were destroyed after Congress subpoenaed them, why is it that Congress isn't holding Mrs. Clinton in contempt? The answer is somewhat obvious. They have an election, and they don't want accountability in a true sense of the word to get in the way of their quest for retaining Congress. And I'm talking about the Republican leadership. And the other uncomfortable point I'm going to bring up, at least from the point of view, I think, of many Republican leaders, is that they can also impeach Mrs. Clinton. And they don't have to wait for her to be president to impeach her. Congress retains the ability to impeach a federal officer for conduct, whether that officer whether that officer is still in office or not.
The point of enormment is when you set up a foundation utilizing this great gift of the tax code of tax deferral or any kind of tax favored treatment, and then you scam the foundation by stealing the money, diverting the money, making yourself rich. Enormment means instead of spending 95 cents on the dollar you get for the charity, you spend 5 cents. And the rest goes to yourself, your associates, your high style of life in 5-star hotels, private jets, etc. And what I'm saying in this book, and it's a detailed analysis, more of almost a prosecutorial looking at the evidence, although I'm a political scientist, but really detailedly looking at the financial statements, the audited financial statements, and the Form 990s. It's Al Capone, if you think of the analogy of gangster in Chicago went to jail not for racketeering, but for income tax evasion. And what I'm saying, and my book is really complementary to the excellent work that Peter Schweitzer has done. Because Peter is arguing a case for pay to play, which is that people paid the Clintons in order to get a policy decision, either when Hillary Clinton was in the Senate or as Secretary of State, made in their favor that otherwise would not have been made. See, the key point, we now know that President Obama, to access Hillary Clinton's email server, used an alias. Now that's right there an indication of guilt, I would think, because why would you use an alias unless you're trying to hide the fact that you're using a private email server offline to the State Department?
This is the scary part of this. What Hillary has done with her private server and then the lying about it, and what Comey has done with, in essence, an FBI cover-up, an official cover-up. This is like the old Soviet Union, let's blot her out of the photograph. I mean, what he has done is he has undermined confidence in the ability of the government to investigate itself.
She lied over and over and over and over. 39 times, right? She said to the FBI on July 4th weekend, not recorded and not sworn in. Not recorded and not sworn in. She said, I can't recall 39 times. Well, that's a lie, because everything there she could recall.
Look, on this investigation itself, there's a methodology that any counterintelligence professional goes through when it comes to collecting evidence, interviewing people who are either witnesses or subjects. Anybody who has access to sensitive compartmental information is subject to a polygraph. Have you ever heard anybody discuss Mrs. Clinton being polygraphed? Not a whisper, not a word. I think the most telling thing with respect to Mrs. Clinton in this national security crime investigation is that this sort of brokered voluntary interview that seems to have been orchestrated by David Kendall was not a rights warning environment. It wasn't a rights warning event. That was my first question when I learned that she was being questioned that Saturday morning. Because if I'm a federal law enforcement officer and I have reason to believe you've committed a crime and I'm questioning you concerning that, I'm obligated to give you a Miranda warning. I have to give you a rights warning. It's not negotiable. And so if I'm not Mirandizing you, if I'm not giving you a rights warning, and I'm a law enforcement officer who's capable of apprehending you for a violation of the law, and I don't do a rights warning, don't take it too terribly serious.
There are shocking new revelations, which you've seen. Front page of the Wall Street Journal, about how the Clinton campaign has corrupted our government. It was just learned that one of the closest people to Hillary Clinton, with long-standing ties to her husband and herself, gave more, this just came out, gave more than $675,000 to the campaign of the spouse, the wife, of the top FBI official who helped oversee the investigation into Mrs. Clinton's illegal email server. WikiLeaks also shows how John Podesta rigged the polls by oversampling Democrats, a voter suppression technique. And that's happening to me all the time. When the polls are even, when they leave them alone and do them properly, I'm leading. In an email, Podesta says that he wants oversamples for our polling in order to maximize what we get out of our media polling. It's called voter suppression. Without the media, she would be nothing. Without the media, Hillary Clinton would be nothing. When the people who control the political power in our society can rig investigations like her investigation was rigged, can rig polls, you see these phony polls, and rig the media, they can wield absolute power over your life, your economy, and your country, and benefit big time by it. They control what you hear and what you don't hear, what is covered, how it's covered, even if it's covered at all.
The Clinton Foundation is a slush fund for grifters. This isn't a charity. This is a vehicle for the facilitation of multi-million-dollar bribes. So the greed, the stealing, the sucking of money out of the Clinton Foundation is going to be a very big issue. I think Donald Trump has particular standing here that nobody else has. You see, the Clintons conned him out of a contribution. Therefore, he's a donor to the Clinton Foundation. Therefore, he can file a lawsuit claiming that he was defrauded. After all, folks, I thought I was giving to charity.
That's right.
I didn't know they were going to steal the money. He can file a lawsuit opening up the entire Clinton Foundation for us to see the scam.
More fun and discovery.
Yes, indeed.
What is your message tonight to Donald Trump and to the campaign about what they need to do in these precious last 16 days?
Close the deal. There's nobody better to do it than Donald Trump. Think about how many deals he has closed. Real estate deals by the thousands. And what did he do to close them? He reminded people of why they wanted to buy the property. So he didn't focus on anything that was negative. He focused on, you need this property. I've got a good price for this property. Donald Trump knows how to close it. And what he's got to do in these next few days is think of this as closing the deal, and do it like he's done it 1,000 times before, and he's done it successfully. He can do this. And Kimberly, I know that I'm kind of in a minority out here in the world of the media. I believe Donald Trump is still going to win. And I really believe that. And part of the reason I do is because there's so many people who are for Donald Trump, but they don't have the courage to say it by putting a yard sign up or answering a poll question, because they don't want to be called a racist or a bigot or a xenophobe. And that's what the media will do to them. And their house will get egged, and their cars' windows will be broken. But by gosh, when they get in that voting booth, they're going to vote for Donald Trump because the option is horrific.